In this chapter, we're going to show you how you can set up your textures to support the UDIM convention in Modo, and also how to convert your files to TiledEXR files. In short, UDIMs, as we explained before, simply means that a file which has 1001 will go here, 1002 will go there, 1003 there, and so on and so forth. 1011, 1021. The way to display this, if you've forgotten, is by going under Options, Properties, and then just set high span to 10 and U high span to 10 and V high span to 10. You can see what happens if we change this. The V high span could actually be set like as high as you want to, but you're most likely not going to have more than 100 UDIMs unless you're working on like proper visual effects assets for the most high-end films out there. If you're doing a regular personal project, you're never going to need more than like 20 UDIMs, even for the most crazy close-up you're ever going to do. So the way we do this is very simple. We go to the clips tab here, we hit add clip, and then we simply just load UDIMs. And then we simply just select our files. And this is now going to load them in here, and we can see all of them are now loaded in. If we click on them and we go to properties and image still, we can see it now has a UDIM tag applied to it, or a UDIM, that's a UDIM tag applied to it. And we can now just see this changes depending on the name. So it simply just reads the name and it puts the name in here. You can do this manually as well. This just does it automatically. So we do this for everything. Just make sure when you load in the second one that the col here is not selected, that the group is not selected. Just hit the escape key a couple of times to deselect it. Then we again go here, load UDIMs, and we set the displacement. And it's the same thing with the specular roughness. It's all here. So this means if we now create a cube, which is all in 1001, we make a new material that's just called head. And then we simply just load the UDIMs in here, or the textures in here. The way we do this is very simple. We hit add layer in the shader tree. We go to image map and use clip browser. You can see all the texture files are now loaded in here, but on the bottom, you can see that the col is, it only says col and it says disp. This is this is the group containing all the UDIMs. So just click on that one. And now I'm just going to just give it a couple of seconds and it's going to load in here. So now you can see it's loaded in here. And if we split this off here to a second UDIM, you can see it's now going to have a second UDIM, it's going to have a third, fourth, and so that's really handy. So you put it here, you can kind of see it's going over the eyes here. So this is how it works. Do the same thing with the displacement map. You can go under image map, use clip browser, or as we've already just done this, you can go under recent and just set to use clip browser here. Load in the displacement map all the way in the bottom. So you do the same thing for everything you have in yours, for all your maps. So normally you might have, if you're doing a full-on character, you might have like 15 to 20 separate maps. If you really want to control the shading and look depth on it, you really want to have like subtle maps, subtle masks, and all little like control maps of various parts of the image. So you're just going to load in all of them here. So clips, load them in, make sure it has a clean name like this. Again, the naming is so important because now we just know it's clean here. There is no ambiguity. It's just a clean convention, and this just works. So let's look into TiledEXR files. In short, a TiledEXR file simply just means it's going to render faster. I'm going to show you an example here. Just bring this up here. So this is a very quick test. You simply using a col map. So here we have, this is using TiledEXR files. So this is 36 seconds. This here is a visually identical render. There is literally no difference here. But you can see the time. This is 36 seconds. Well, this is 45 seconds. We sliced off almost, well, like 8.5 seconds on this simply by using TiledEXR files. If you scale this up, and let's say you have like 20 files for this, and you're doing like full HD, and you're doing like 2000 frames, this adds up a lot. So you can cut off, in certain cases, you can cut the render time down to something like half, which is incredible. So I would highly recommend using TiledEXR files for everything. The way we do this is very easy. I'm just going to make a new scene here to keep it clean. New scene, Control N, and then we just hit add clips. And then we just load in all the files here. So just load in all the textures you have. I would recommend that you keep all the textures you have, all the final textures in one folder. Like I have a folder called work in progress, then I have a folder called published. In the published folder, only the released or the finished textures are. So I never work with those. I put, whenever I finish up a texture, I put that in a separate folder and I copy it over to the published one. This just keeps it really nice and clean. So these are the textures I'm going to turn into a TileEXR file. So if you do this, you can just hit right mouse button on them and export TileEXR. Now we can just set a folder for this. I'm just going to do this for one here. Make a new folder called TileEXR. I already done this, so I just have a slightly messier setup here now. Now we can see we have certain options here. Just disable replace source. I believe this will just replace the source here. We also have 32-bit. We don't need our maps to be 32-bit at all, because that's extremely overkill. They can totally be 16-bit. That's just going to save on space, and it's just going to be quicker to load. So if you're doing pretty much all maps, they can just be regular 16-bit maps. So just hit OK. Default settings are perfectly fine, except for one case: displacement maps. As far as I know, displacement maps needs to be 32-bit. I've had times before where I've accidentally made them 16-bit, and then you get banding. That's what we were talking about before. You get instead of like this smooth result, you get this like this really jagged result. So if you when I convert files like this, I select everything but the displacement, and then I export these out. And just set regular settings here, hit OK. And then I select these, export TileEXR2, same thing. And then make sure these are 32-bit. And once you do this, you can just see, you get a little progress bar here, and it's just going to write them out. And this doesn't take too long. It might take a couple of minutes depending on how many files you have. And unlike ZBrush, you can do like whatever, you can alt tab out and all that kind of stuff. So then we get them here, and they're going to be, you can just load them in like we did before. So these are the UDIMs I'm going to load in. When I'm doing my final scene, which we're going to do in a bit, you go here, clip, UDIM, and then we select the TileEXRs. We're not going to select the TIFF files. That's why I said it doesn't matter what we export out from ZBrush, if it's PNG, EXR, TIFF, or whatever, because it need to be here. And also, a TileEXR is not the same as an EXR file. Our displacement maps are EXR files, but they're not tiled. It simply means they're going to load faster. So that's pretty much it. It's very easy to set up UDIMs in Modo, and it's faster and responsive, and it's a pretty good implementation for it. So we're going to set this up for real when we set the scene up properly. Then we're going to set all this up the way you should set it up.